Chapter 3. Where do you live? So you've been working hard for years, climbing the ladder. Maybe you're still near the bottom of the ladder, or maybe you even got near the top. Where you are on the ladder doesn't really matter. What matters is the question that you may have forgotten to stop and ask before putting in all that time and effort climbing: where is this ladder planted? As Stephen R. Covey points out, it doesn't matter how fast or high you climb on the ladder if it's leaning against the wrong wall. The purpose of this chapter is for you to stop climbing for a minute and see where your ladder is planted. And, if you're not happy where it is, to find out where you might want to move it. How do you make the money you make? Most people assume that their financial standing is defined by how much they earn, how much they're worth, or some combination of both. And there's no doubt that this has some bearing. Forbes magazine defines rich as a person who earns in excess of $1 million per year, about $83,333 per month, or just under $20,000 a week, and poor as someone who earns less than $25,000 a year. But even more important than the quantity of money you make is the quality of money you make. In other words, not just how much you make, but how you make it, where it comes from. There are actually 4 distinct sources of cash flow. Each is quite different from the other, and each defines and determines a very different lifestyle, regardless of the amount of cash you earn. After publishing Rich Dad Poor Dad, I wrote a book to explain these 4 different income worlds. Many people have said that this book, Cash Flow Quadrant, is the most important writing I've done because it goes right to the heart of the crucial issues involved for people who are ready to make true changes in their lives. The cash flow quadrant represents the different methods by which a cash income is generated. For example, an employee earns money by holding a job and working for someone else or a company. The self-employed are people who earn money working for themselves, either as solo operators or through their own small business. A business owner owns a large business, typically defined as 500 employees or more, that generates money. Investors earn money from their various investments, in other words, money generating more money. E equals employee. S equals self-employed or small business owner. B equals business owner. I equals investor. Which quadrant do you live in? In other words, from which quadrant do you receive the majority of the income on which you live? The E quadrant. The overwhelming majority of us learn, live, love, and leave this life entirely within the E quadrant. Our educational system and culture train us, from the cradle to the grave, in how to live in the world of the E quadrant. The operating philosophy for this world is what my poor dad, my real father, taught me, and what you probably learned, too, when you were growing up: go to school, study hard and get good grades, and get a good job with benefits at a great company. The S quadrant. Driven by the urge for more freedom and self-determination, a lot of people migrate from the E quadrant to the S quadrant. This is the place where people go to strike out on their own and pursue the American dream. The S quadrant includes a huge range of earning power, all the way from the teenage freelance babysitter or landscaper just starting out in life to the highly paid private practice lawyer, consultant, or public speaker. But whether you're earning $8 an hour or $80,000 a year, the S quadrant is typically a trap. You may have thought you were firing your boss, but what really happened is that you just changed bosses. You are still an employee. The only difference is that when you want to blame your boss for your problems, that boss is you. The S quadrant can be a thankless and difficult place to live. Everyone picks on you here. The government picks on you. You spend one full day a week just in tax compliance. Your employees pick on you, your customers pick on you, and your family picks on you because you never take any time off. How can you? If you do, you lose ground. You have no free time because if you take time off, the business doesn't earn money. In a very real way, the S stands for slavery. You don't really own your business owns you. The B quadrant. The B quadrant is where people go to create big businesses. The difference between an S business and a B business is that you work for your S business, but your B business works for you. I have many B businesses, including my manufacturing business, my real estate business, mining companies, and others. Those who live and work in the B quadrant make themselves recession-proof, because they control the source of their own income. The I quadrant. This is not rocket science. My rich dad taught me to live in the I quadrant by playing Monopoly, and we all know how that works. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel, 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. Changing jobs is not changing quadrants. Now let me explain why it's so important to understand these different quadrants. How often have you heard someone complain about their job, then decide to make a change, only to end up a few years later with the same old complaints? I keep working harder and harder, but I'm just not getting ahead. Every time I get a raise, it gets eaten up by taxes and higher expenses. I'd rather be doing fill in the blank, but I can't afford to go back to school and learn a whole new profession at this stage of my life. This job stinks. My boss stinks. Life stinks. Etc. These and dozens of others like them are all statements that reveal a person who is trapped not in a certain job, but in an entire quadrant. The problem is, most of the time when people do get up the initiative to actually make a change in their lives, all they do is change jobs. What they need to do is change quadrants. Breaking away from those typical job structures and creating your own stream of income puts you in the best position to weather an economic storm, simply because you are no longer dependent on a boss or on the economy to determine your annual income. Now you determine it. The left-hand side, the E and S quadrants, is where most people live. That's where we are brought up and trained to live. Get good grades, so you can get a good job, we're told. But your grades don't matter in the B quadrant. Your banker doesn't ask to see your report card, he wants to see your financial statement. Breaking away from those typical job structures and creating your own stream of income puts you in the best position to weather an economic storm, simply because you are no longer dependent on a boss or on the economy to determine your annual income. Now you determine it. At least 80% of the population lives on the left-hand side of this picture. The E quadrant, especially, is where we are taught we will find safety and security. On the other hand, the right-hand side, the B and I quadrants, is where freedom resides. If you want to live on that side, then you can make it happen. But if you want the relative safety of the left-hand side, then maybe what I have to share here is not for you. That's a decision only you can make. Which quadrant do you live in? Which quadrant do you want to live in? The end of chapter 3. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so now. God bless you. Chapter 4. Your core financial values. The 4 quadrants are not just 4 different business structures. It's even more about 4 different mindsets. Which quadrant you choose to earn your primary income from has less to do with external circumstances, your education, training, the economy, what appear to be the available opportunities around you, and much more to do with who you are at your core, your strengths, weaknesses, and central interests. It is a matter of your core financial values. It is these core differences that attract us to or repel us from the different quadrants. This is important to grasp because it means that shifting from the E or S quadrant over to the B quadrant isn't as simple as filling out a change of address form at the post office. You not only change what you do, but in a very real way, you also change who you are. Or at least, how you think. Some people may love being employees, while others hate it. Some people love owning companies, but do not want to run them. Certain people love investing, while others see only the risk of losing money. Most of us are a little of each of these characters. It is also important to note that you can be rich or poor in all of the 4 quadrants. There are people who earn millions and people who go bankrupt in each of the quadrants. Living in any one quadrant does not in itself necessarily guarantee financial success. You can tell which quadrant people are living in by listening to their words. When I was 9 years old, I began sitting in with my rich dad when he interviewed people for possible hiring. From these interviews, I learned to listen for people's core values that my rich dad said came from their souls. Here are some key phrases that emerge from each quadrant, along with a snapshot of the core values of each. Security, independence, wealth building, financial freedom. E quadrant values: I am looking for a safe, secure job with good pay and excellent benefits. For someone living in the E quadrant, the core value is security. You might be the top earning vice president of a company yet still share the same core values as the company's janitor, who earns a tenth of your salary. A person in the E quadrant, regardless if he is the janitor or the president, often thinks or says words such as, I am looking for a safe, secure job with benefits. Or, how much do we get for overtime? Or, How many paid holidays do we have? When I'm having a conversation with someone in the E quadrant and I talk about how much I love starting my own businesses, he may say, "Yeah, but isn't that risky?" We each see life from our own core values. What is exciting for me is frightening to someone else. This is why, when I'm in the company of people who live in the E and S quadrants, I usually talk about the weather, sports, or what is on television. S quadrant values: if you want something done right, do it yourself. For people in the S quadrant, the core value is independence. They want the freedom to do what they want. When a person says, "I'm going to quit my job and go out on my own," the path taken is from the E quadrant to the S quadrant. People found in the S quadrant are small business owners, mom and pop businesses, specialists, and consultants. For example, I have a friend who installs big screen televisions, phone systems, and security systems in rich people's homes. He has a staff of 3 and is happy to be the boss of just 3 people. He is a hardcore, hard-working commission salespeople, such as real estate agents and insurance brokers, are in the S quadrant. The S quadrant is also filled with professional people, such as doctors, lawyers, and accountants who do not belong to a large medical, legal, or accounting firm. People living in the S quadrant often take great pride in the work of their own hands or brains. If they had a theme song, it would be either "Nobody Does It Better" or "My Way." Yet, behind the facade of independence, you will often find a lack of trust at the core of this person's approach to business, which also means his approach to life, because how we view our business tends to be how we view everything. An S is often paid by commission or by the amount of time spent on a job. For example, an S may be heard saying words such as, "My commission is 6% of the total purchase price," or "I charge $100 an hour," or "My fee is cost plus 10%. Whenever I meet someone from the E or S quadrant who is having difficulty making the transition to the B quadrant, I usually see a person with great technical or management skills but little leadership ability. My rich dad used to say, "If you're the leader of the team and you're also the smartest person on the team, your team is in trouble." People in the S quadrant often don't work too well with teams, they may even have a bit of an ego problem. To make the jump from S to B quadrant, what is needed is a quantum jump, not in technical skills, but in leadership skills. As I've said many times before, in the real world, the A students often go to work for the C students and the B students work for the government. If you've ever heard yourself saying, "If you want something done right, do it yourself," or if you tend to think that way, it might be a good time to take a good long look at that philosophy. B quadrant values: I'm looking for the best people to join my team. For people in the B quadrant, the core value is wealth building. People who start from nothing and build great B quadrant businesses are often people with powerful life missions, who value a great team and efficient teamwork and want to serve and work with as many people as possible. While a person in the S quadrant wants to be the best in his or her field, A B quadrant person wants to build a team out of other people who are the best in their fields. Henry Ford surrounded himself with people smarter than he was. While an S quadrant business person is often the smartest or most talented person in the room, this is often not true for a B quadrant business person. When you own a B quadrant business, you will often deal with people who are much smarter, more experienced, and more capable than you are. My rich dad had no formal education, but I watched him deal with bankers, lawyers, accountants, investment advisors, and experts, many of whom had advanced degrees. In raising money for his businesses, he often dealt with people who were far richer than he was. If he had lived by the motto, "If you want something done right, do it yourself," he would have ended up a complete failure. When it comes to being paid, a true B quadrant person can leave his or her business and still get paid. In most cases, if someone in the S quadrant stops working, the income stops also. Therefore, a question you may want to ask yourself now is, if I stop working today, how much income continues to come in? If your income stops in 6 months or less, then, chances are, you are in the E or S quadrants. A person in the B or I quadrants can stop working for years and the money will continue to come in. I quadrant values what's my return on investment. What people in the I quadrant value most is financial freedom. The investor loves the idea of his money working instead of him working. Investors invest in many things. They may invest in gold coins, real estate, businesses, or paper assets such as stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. If your income comes from company or government retirement plans, rather than your own personal investing knowledge, then that is income from the E quadrant. In other words, your boss, or the business is still paying its bill for your years of service. Words an investor might be heard saying are, "I'm receiving a 20% return on my assets," or, "Show me the company's financials," or, "How much deferred maintenance is on the property?" Different quadrants, different investors. In today's world, we all need to be investors. However, our school systems do not teach us much about investing. Oh, I know that some schools teach stock picking, but to me, that is not investing, that's gambling. Years ago, my rich dad pointed out to me that most employees invest in mutual funds or savings. He also said, just because you're successful in one quadrant, such as the E, S, or B, does not mean you will be successful in the I quadrant. Doctors are often the worst investors. My rich dad also pointed out to me that different quadrants invest in different ways. For example, a person in the S quadrant might be heard saying, "I don't invest in real estate because I don't want to fix toilets." A person in the B quadrant addressing the same investment challenge might say, "I want to hire a good property management company to fix my toilets at night." In other words, an S quadrant investor will think he has to do the property maintenance on his own, and a B quadrant investor will hire another company to do the property maintenance for him. Different people, different mindsets, different quadrants, different values. By now, you've probably figured out where I'm going with this. It comes down to a pretty simple thing: if you want to get rich, you're going to have to move. You don't need a new job, you need a new address. If you want control over your life and destiny, if you want real freedom, the freedom to call your shots, set your schedule, spend time with your family and with yourself, doing the things you love to do, if you want to live the life you were designed to live, no holds barred, a life of passion and excitement and fulfillment, in short, if you want to be rich and live rich, then it's time to pack up your stuff and move. It's time to leave the left side of the chart and move over to the B and I quadrants. If you want to get rich, you're going to have to move. You don't need a new job, you need a new address. The end of chapter 4. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so now. God bless you. Chapter 5. The mindset of an entrepreneur. After finishing college, I enrolled in a traditional business school to pursue my MBA so I could be a trained and educated entrepreneur. I lasted 9 months before dropping out. Needless to say, I did not receive my MBA upon leaving. These days, business schools often invite me to come speak to their students in classes on entrepreneurship. I probably don't need to point out that I sometimes find this ironic. Common questions these students ask me are: how do I find investors, and how do I raise capital? I understand the questions, because they haunted me when I left the security of a traditional job and became an entrepreneur myself. I had no money, and no one wanted to invest with me. The big venture capital firms were not knocking on my door. So what do I tell these business school students? I tell them, you just do it. You do it because you have to do it. If you don't, you are out of business. Today, even though I have enough money, all I do is raise capital. For an entrepreneur, that is job number 1. We raise capital from 3 groups of people: customers, investors, and employees. Your job as an entrepreneur is to get your customers to buy your products. If you can get customers to give you money by buying your products, your investors will give you lots of money. And if you have employees, your job is to get them to produce and make you at least 10 times more money than you pay them. If you can't get your employees to produce at least 10 times more than you pay them, you're out of business, and if you're out of business, you don't need to raise any more money. You do not have to raise the capital to create your business, because that has already been done for you. But you do have to build your business. This is not the answer most MBA students are looking for. Most are looking for the magic formula, the secret recipe, the quick business plan to riches. This doesn't seem to be the answer their instructors are hoping I'll give, either, because I notice them squirming when I say this stuff. Why? Because while they teach entrepreneurship, most of them are not themselves entrepreneurs, which is why they have a steady teaching job with a steady paycheck and are hoping for tenure. My point is not that you have to raise money. In fact, in the business model I'm going to share with you in this book, You do not have to raise the capital to create your business, because that has already been done for you. But you do have to build your business. My point is that this is what defines an entrepreneur. You make things happen. You pull yourself out of the rows of passenger seats, walk to the head of the bus, and get behind the wheel of your life. What does it take to be an entrepreneur? Entrepreneurs are the richest people on earth. We know the names of the famous entrepreneurs: Richard Branson and Donald Trump, Oprah Winfrey and Steve Jobs, Rupert Murdoch and Ted Turner. But most wealthy entrepreneurs are people you and I will never hear of, because they don't command media attention, they just quietly live rich lives. I often hear people debate the question, are entrepreneurs born or can they be developed? Some think it takes a special person or a certain magic to be an entrepreneur. To me, being an entrepreneur is not that big a deal, you just do it. Let me give you an example. There's a teenager in my neighborhood who has a thriving babysitting business and hires her junior high classmates to work for her. She is an entrepreneur. Another young boy has a handyman business after school. He is an entrepreneur. Most kids have no fear, while for most adults, that's all they do have. Today, there are millions of people who dream of quitting their jobs and becoming entrepreneurs, running their own businesses. The problem is, for most people, their dream is just a dream. So the question is, why do so many fail to go for their dream of becoming an entrepreneur? I have a friend who is a brilliant hairstylist. When it comes to making women look beautiful, he is a magician. For years, he's talked about opening his own salon. He has big plans, but sadly, he still remains small, running a single chair in a large salon, constantly at odds with the owner. Another friend has a wife who became tired of being a flight attendant. 2 years ago, she quit her job and went to school to become a hairstylist. A month ago. It takes courage to discover, develop, and donate your genius to the world. She had a grand opening for her salon. It is a spectacular environment and she has attracted some of the best hairstylists to work there. When the first friend heard about her salon, he said, "How can she open a salon? She has no talent. She is not gifted. She wasn't trained in New York like I was. And besides, she doesn't have any experience. I give her a year and she's going to fail. Maybe she will fail. Statistics show that 90% of all businesses fail in the first 5 years. On the other hand, maybe she won't. The point is that she's doing it. She has grasped the impact that courage has in shaping our lives. It takes courage to discover, develop, and donate your genius to the world. Of U.S. lottery winners who win in excess of $3 million each, 80% are bankrupt within 3 years. Why? Because money alone does not make you rich. These people may add numbers to their checking accounts, but the mere numbers do not make them rich, because they do not change how they think. Your mind is infinite. It's your doubts that are limiting. Ayn Rand, the author of Atlas Shrugged, said, "Wealth is the product of man's capacity to think." So if you are ready to change your life, I'm going to introduce you to an environment that will allow your brain to think and you to grow richer. What do you want to be when you grow up? When I was a kid, my real dad often told me to go to school and get good grades so I could get a safe, secure job. He was programming me for the E quadrant. My mother would urge me to consider becoming a doctor or lawyer. That way you'll always have a profession to fall back on. She was programming me for the S quadrant. My rich dad told me that if I wanted to grow up to become rich, I should become a business owner and an investor. He was programming me for the B and I quadrants. When I returned from Vietnam, I had to make up my mind which advice I would listen to. You are faced with the same choice. One reason you want to create your own business is to get your dignity back. Don't underestimate the importance of this reason. The world is full of bullies and small-minded people, and whether they are your boss, your manager, your neighbor, or even your friend, you don't want them pushing you around anymore. You want to take control of your life. You want to have the courage not to care when other people bully you around. You want to have the freedom to think and act for yourself. A Maserati mind. Now let's ask that question again. Where do you live? Now you can appreciate what shifting from one cash flow quadrant to another means. It's not just a different structure. It's a different approach to life. Yes, it's about the business, but at the same time, it's not really about the business, that's only the external form. Putting a horse farmer behind the wheel of a Maserati doesn't make him a racing car driver. He needs the skills, the training, and, most important, the mindset of a racing car driver. The same is true of your financial life. You need to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur. That mindset comes down to this: an entrepreneur is self-determining. You make things happen, which means you don't get to blame anyone or anything outside yourself. Not that you're going to have to do it all yourself from the ground up, like I did with my businesses. No, one of the beauties of the business of the 21st century is that all the groundwork of the business is already done for you, and you get to have experienced leaders committed to your success to guide you. But make no mistake, if it's going to happen for you, you are going to be the one who makes it happen. And for that to happen, you need to have the mindset of an entrepreneur. If you don't, then no matter how good the business is or how great your teachers are, the business is going to have a tough time getting results. The business model we'll explore in part 2 of this book is a Maserati, but you are the one behind the wheel. First and foremost, it's about you. Are you prepared to take the wheel? Do you have what it takes? One of the beauties of the business of the 21st century is that all the groundwork of the business is already done for you. The end of chapter 5. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do so now. God bless you. Chapter 6. It's time to take control. It was 1985 and my wife, Kim, and I were homeless. We were unemployed and had little money left from savings, Our credit cards were exhausted and we lived in an old brown Toyota with reclining seats that served as beds. At the end of a week of sleeping in our car, the harsh reality of who we were, what we were doing, and where we were headed began to sink in. After a friend realized our desperate situation, she offered us a room in her basement. When friends and family were informed of our plight, the first question was always, "Why don't you just get a job?" At first we attempted to explain, but we had a hard time clarifying our reasons to our well-meaning inquisitors. When you're talking to someone who values having a job, it is difficult to explain why you might not want a job. We occasionally earned a few dollars doing a few odd jobs here and there. But we did that only to keep food in our stomachs and gas in our house, our car. I must admit that during moments of deep personal doubt, the idea of a safe, secure job with a paycheck was appealing. But because job security was not what we were looking for, we kept pushing on, living day to day on the brink of the financial abyss. We knew we could always find a safe, secure, high-paying job. Both of us were college graduates with good job skills and a solid work ethic. But we weren't going for job security. We were going for financial freedom. By 1989, we were millionaires. I often hear people say, "It takes money to make money." That's BS, and I don't mean a Bachelor of Science degree. Our journey from homelessness to being millionaires in 4 years, and then on to genuine financial freedom in another 5 years, did not take money. We had no money when we started. In fact, we were in debt and nobody gave us anything along the way, either. It also does not take a good formal education. A college education is important for traditional professions, but not for people looking to build wealth. If it doesn't take money to make money, and it doesn't take a formal education to learn how to become financially free, then what does it take? It takes a dream, a lot of determination, a willingness to learn quickly, and an understanding of which sector of the cash flow quadrant you're operating in. Hard work will not make you rich. There is this strange idea in our culture that says, if you work really hard, you'll be okay. What a pile of baloney. And what's so tragic about it is that most people have been brainwashed to believe it, and they do believe it, even though we're all surrounded by tons of evidence to the contrary. What evidence? Just look around you. Do you know anyone who has worked really hard his entire life, only to end up living a life that hovers just above or just below the indignity and heartbreak called subsistence level? Of course you do. We all do. The world is full of people who work hard and are most definitely not okay. And perhaps the worst part about it is that many of these unfortunates come to the conclusion that it was their fault, their personal failing. They did all the right things, right? But it still didn't work. Maybe they just didn't try hard enough, or didn't get the lucky breaks. Maybe they were just not cut out for success. Nonsense. The problem is that the hard work myth is just that, a myth. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that building wealth and financial freedom doesn't take hard work. It does, and lots of it. I hope you're not naive enough to believe the idiots who will tell you they can show a way to wealth that's easy, that's quick, or that's painless. Because if you are, I know a bridge you can buy real cheap and an entire system of subprime mortgages and credit default swaps that might be just right for you. No, it takes hard work, all right. The question is, hard work doing what? I can already hear you thinking, doing what? Making money, of course. But not so fast, because here's the cold, hard truth lurking behind that sad error of our culture's thinking. Working hard at making money will never create wealth. People who work for income work harder and harder, only to be taxed more and more. Forget working hard at making money, all you'll do is spend it, and then have to work hard all over again. You might be asking, okay, so what do I do? You take control. Take control of what? After all, most things in life you cannot control, no matter how hard you try. You can't control the market. You can't control employees. You can't control the economy. What can you control? You can control the source of your income. The problem. Building a business is the way most of the very rich became rich. Bill Gates built Microsoft. Michael Dell created Dell computers in his dormitory room. Still, historically, there have been very few people who have truly lived in the B quadrant. The B quadrant is the best place to begin generating genuine wealth, but at the same, there are some barriers to entry that have kept most people out. For one thing, most people don't have the cash it takes to start their own business. Today it costs an average of $5 million to start your own business. And for another thing, building your own business from scratch remains the riskiest of all ways to become rich. The failure rate for new businesses is about 90% in the first 5 years, and if your new venture fails, guess who just lost $5 million? In my early years of starting businesses, I failed twice, and while it never pushed me into bankruptcy, and I never got any government bailouts, it did cost me millions of dollars. Typically when you start your own business, you have to make sure your rent, utilities, and the rest of your overhead are paid, your employees are paid, and your suppliers are paid, or you're out of business. So guess who doesn't get paid? You. In the course of starting a new business, and I'm talking here about a successful business, you can easily go 5 to 10 years without taking a paycheck. Remember Kim and me, sleeping in our beat-up Toyota? It wasn't fun. We could have taken jobs that would have immediately put a roof over our heads, but as miserable as it was, and believe me, it was, we chose homelessness over employment because we believed in our dream of being business owners and living in the B quadrant. Most people do not have the mental, emotional, physical, or financial stamina to handle these conditions. It can be brutal, and usually is. What about a franchise? A franchise takes a great part of the risk out of it. With an established franchise like McDonald's or Subway, your odds of success improve significantly, and a lot of the groundwork is done for you. But you're still stuck with problem number 1, you have to come up with the cash. The cost of purchasing one of the better-known franchises can range from $100,000 to $1.5 million or even more, and that's just for the rights to the franchise. Then there are monthly payments to headquarters for training, advertising, and support. And even all this support is still no guarantee of great wealth. Many times a person must continue to pay money to the franchisor or headquarters, even when his or her personal franchise is losing money. Even if you are one of those who succeeds at a franchise, chances are very good that you still won't make any money yourself for the first few years. And 1 in 3 franchises eventually go broke. When my poor dad was 50 years old, he had the temerity to run for governor of Hawaii, and the incumbent he was running against happened to be his boss. Not only did he lose the election, but his boss fired him and told him he'd never work in Hawaii again. He took all his savings and used it to buy a popular franchise, one that was billed as a never-lose franchise. The franchise that couldn't lose lost, and so did my dad. In fact, he lost everything. In theory, a franchise is a great idea, but in reality, it's a gamble, and it's a gamble where you have to pony up a fortune just to sidle up to the table and play. The power of passive income. Have you ever used one of those spring-loaded water faucets that some public restrooms install to save water? When you turn the water on, you have to hold the faucet there, because when you let go, it bounces back to the off position. Most people's income source works just like that faucet. You get a little money flowing, and then when you let go, it bounces back to off. You can never build freedom that way. What you want is a money faucet that you can let go of once you've turned it on, because it stays on by itself. It's not just about having income today, tomorrow, and next week, it's about securing your income in perpetuity. This is passive income, also known as residual income, income that continues coming in, over and over, long after you finished expending the effort and capital it took to create the source of the income. Shifting yourself into the B quadrant is a strong step in that direction, but not all businesses will create passive income. If you own a restaurant, you earn income only when you prepare and sell a meal. If your business fixes air conditioners, you earn income only when you provide that service. Even high-salaried doctors and lawyers earn money only when they see patients or clients. If no patients or clients require their knowledge and services in a particular week, the income faucet springs shut again and there's no money coming in that week. What most people need is an avenue to create passive income. Knowing this, Donald Trump and I teamed up to evaluate the many kinds of business structures that can create passive income, and published our results in a book, We Want You to Be Rich. And by the way, that's not just a book title. We do want you to be rich. Wealth is not a zero-sum game. It's not like if you become rich, then you're taking it away from me, or Donald, or anyone else. This is an astonishing and abundant world we live in, and there is way more than enough energy, material, ingenuity, creativity, and ambition to allow every human being on the planet to be wealthy. So what did we discover? We found that one business model stood out from the rest. This particular business model creates passive income, but requires relatively little cash investment to start up. It has very low overhead, and can be operated on a flexible part-time basis until it generates enough cash flow for the entrepreneur to transition out of his current full-time job. That business model is called network marketing, and it's what the rest of this book is all about. The end of chapter 6.